The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the Ashford mansion, casting geometric patterns across the marble floors. Maria Santos moved quietly through the east wing, her cleaning cart rolling softly beside her. She'd worked as a housekeeper for Alexander Ashford for 8 months now, and she knew the rules by heart. The most important one: Mr. Ashford's study was off-limits except for Tuesdays and Fridays between 2 and 3 o'clock, when he was guaranteed to be in meetings downtown. Today was Thursday. Maria paused outside the heavy oak door, her hand hovering over the brass handle. She'd missed Tuesday's cleaning because of her daughter Lily's doctor's appointment, and she couldn't skip Friday because Mr. Ashford would be working from home. The study had to be cleaned. Her supervisor, Mrs. Chun, had made that abundantly clear during their morning briefing. Taking a deep breath, Maria knocked softly. Silence answered her. Mr. Ashford was at his office. She'd seen his driver leave with him that morning. Still, her heart hammered as she turned the handle. The study was exactly as she remembered, intimidating and pristine. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes and expensive-looking artifacts. A massive mahogany desk dominated the center of the room, its surface almost empty except for a laptop, a small bronze sculpture, and a pen resting on an ornate wooden holder. Maria had seen that pen before. Mr. Ashford carried it everywhere, signed every document with it. She'd once overheard him telling a business associate that it had been his grandfather's, a custom-made Mont Blanc from the 1950s. The reverence in his voice when he spoke about it had made her extra careful whenever she cleaned near it. She'd barely started dusting the bookshelves when she heard the sound, a soft giggle from the hallway. Maria's blood ran cold. Lily, her daughter, appeared in the doorway, her dark curls bouncing as she toddled into the study. At 2 years old, Lily was at that perfect storm age, mobile, curious, and faster than Maria ever anticipated. She'd left her daughter in the staff break room with her coloring books, but Lily had apparently had other plans. Mama. Lily's face lit up with delight at this game of hide-and-seek she thought they were playing. Sweetheart, no, Maria whispered urgently, moving toward her daughter. We can't be in here. This is Mr. Ashford's special room. But Lily was already exploring, her small hands reaching for the interesting objects at her eye level. Maria scooped her up quickly, but not before Lily's arms swept across a side table, knocking over a small stack of papers. We have to go right now, Maria said, setting Lily down and quickly gathering the scattered documents. Her hands shook as she tried to put them back in order. She shouldn't even be touching these. They were probably confidential business papers worth more than her annual salary. Pretty, Lily exclaimed, and Maria turned to see her daughter standing on her tiptoes at Mr. Ashford's desk, reaching for the bronze sculpture. Lily, no. Maria rushed over, grabbing her daughter just as Lily's fingers closed around the sculpture's base. She pulled Lily back, but the little girl's grip had already shifted the sculpture several inches across the desk. The pen. Maria watched in horror as the movement caused the wooden pen holder to teeter. Time seemed to slow as the holder tipped forward and the precious Mont Blanc rolled across the desk's edge. She lunged for it, still holding Lily with one arm. Her fingertips brushed the pen's barrel, but she couldn't catch it. The pen hit the marble floor with a sickening crack. For a moment, Maria couldn't breathe. She stood frozen, Lily squirming in her arms, staring at the pen lying on the floor. Even from here, she could see that the barrel had split, the cap had separated, and the gold nib was bent at an unnatural angle. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh no, no, no." Lily, sensing her mother's distress, began to whimper. "Mama?" Maria's mind raced through impossible calculations. That pen was irreplaceable, a family heirloom, a piece of history. Even if she worked for Mr. Ashford for the rest of her life, she could never afford to compensate him for its loss. And more than the money, it was the sentimental value. She destroyed something he treasured. She would be fired. Of course she would be fired. And without a reference from one of the wealthiest men in the city, finding another job would be nearly impossible. The small apartment she rented, the health insurance that covered Lily's asthma treatments, the stability she'd worked so hard to build for her daughter after Lily's father left, it would all disappear. Tears blurred her vision as she set Lily down gently and knelt to pick up the broken pieces. The pen came apart in her hands, revealing the intricate inner mechanisms, now twisted and damaged. "I'm sorry, Mama," Lily said softly, her own eyes filling with tears. At 2, she didn't understand what had happened, but she understood that something was very wrong. "It's not your fault, baby," Maria managed, though her voice cracked. "It's mine. I should have been more careful. I should have." She couldn't finish. What should she have done? Not brought Lily to work? But she had no one to watch her daughter, and Mr. Ashford had been understanding about her situation when he hired her. He'd said the mansion was large enough that a quiet child wouldn't be a problem, as long as Maria kept Lily in the staff areas. This was so far beyond a problem. Maria looked at the broken pen in her hands, then at her daughter's worried face, then at the study door. She could leave. She could put the pen back on the desk, walk out, and pretend she'd never been here. When Mr. Ashford discovered it, he might assume he'd broken it himself, or that it had fallen on its own. But even as the thought crossed her mind, she knew she couldn't do it. Her mother had raised her better than that. If you break something, you own up to it. If you make a mistake, you face the consequences. Still, facing consequences and accepting them gracefully were two different things. Maria sank into the leather chair beside the desk, the broken pen pieces cradled in her lap, and allowed herself exactly 1 minute of quiet despair before she would figure out what to do next. Lily climbed into her lap, wrapping her small arms around Maria's neck. "Don't cry, Mama." Maria held her daughter close, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo, and tried to find the courage to do what came next. Maria sat in that chair for longer than she'd intended, her mind cycling through scenarios, each one bleaker than the last. Through the study's tall windows, she could see the formal gardens stretching toward the tree line, the manicured hedges and marble fountains that represented a world so different from her own. She'd been careful, so careful, to respect the boundaries between her life and Mr. Ashford's. And now those boundaries had shattered as completely as the pen in her lap. "Mama, fix it?" Lily asked, touching one of the broken pieces with a gentle finger. The innocent question sparked something in Maria's chest. Fix it. Could she? She looked down at the pen more carefully, examining the damage. The barrel had cracked along a seam. The cap was dented. The gold nib was bent. It was bad, but perhaps not completely irreparable. If she could at least put it back together, make it look whole again, maybe Mr. Ashford would be less angry. Maybe he would see that she'd tried. It was a foolish hope, she knew. A repaired heirloom was still a damaged heirloom. But doing something felt better than doing nothing. "Yes, baby," she whispered. "Mama's going to try to fix it." She set Lily down with firm instructions to stay put and sit quietly, then hurried to the staff supply closet. Her hands still trembled as she gathered what she could find: super glue, clear tape, a small pair of tweezers from the first aid kit, and a magnifying glass that someone had left behind months ago. Back in the study, Maria spread a towel across a corner of Mr. Ashford's desk. She couldn't risk damaging the wood, and laid out the pen pieces like a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. In the bright afternoon light, the damage looked even worse. The pen was old, the materials fragile. One wrong move, and she could make things irreparably worse. But what choice did she have? She started with the barrel, trying to align the crack as precisely as possible. Her hands shook so badly that she had to stop and take several deep breaths. Lily watched quietly from the chair, her earlier excitement replaced by an unusual stillness. Even at 2, she seemed to sense the gravity of the situation. The super glue went on in tiny, careful drops. Maria used the tweezers to hold the pieces together, counting slowly to 100 before releasing the pressure. The crack was still visible, of course it was, but at least the barrel was whole again. Next came the cap. The dent was stubborn, resistant to her careful attempts to push it out from the inside. She worked slowly, terrified of making it worse, using the rounded end of a pen from her own pocket to gently work the metal back into shape. It wasn't perfect, it would never be perfect, but it was better. The nib was the hardest part. The delicate gold was bent, and Maria knew nothing about fountain pens, let alone expensive vintage ones. She held it under the magnifying glass, trying to understand how it had been shaped originally. Using the gentlest pressure, she attempted to bend it back, but the metal was stubborn, and she was so afraid of snapping it completely that her progress was agonizingly slow. "You can do it, Mama," Lily said softly from her chair, and Maria felt tears prick her eyes again. "Thank you, baby girl." An hour passed, then another. The afternoon light shifted, growing longer and more golden. Maria's back ached from hunching over the desk, and her eyes burned from the close work, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. This pen was everything: Mr. Ashford's family history, her job, her daughter's security. Everything balanced on her ability to undo what had been done. She tried the nib again, adjusting the angle incrementally, and felt something give slightly. Her heart leaped. Had she made progress, or had she made things worse? It was impossible to tell without trying to write with it, and she didn't dare. Finally, carefully, Maria began to reassemble the pen. The clip went back onto the cap. The cap fitted onto the barrel, not quite as smoothly as it should have, the glue creating slight resistance, but it worked. She stood the pen upright on the desk and stepped back, wiping her sweaty palms on her uniform. From a distance, it looked almost normal. The crack in the barrel was visible if you looked closely, a thin line running along the side. The cap's dent had been mostly smoothed out, but left a slight irregularity in the surface. The nib appeared straight, but whether it would write properly was anyone's guess. It wasn't fixed. Not really. But it was together. Whole, if not intact. Maria felt a sob building in her chest. She'd tried so hard, worked so carefully, and it still wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Mr. Ashford would know the moment he picked it up that something had happened to his grandfather's pen. Mama sighed. Lily had climbed down from the chair and wrapped her arms around Maria's legs. "Yes, sweetheart, Mama's a little sad," Maria admitted, scooping her daughter up. She held Lily close, drawing strength from the solid warmth of her small body. Whatever happened next, whatever consequences she faced, Lily was worth it. Every sacrifice, every difficulty, every moment of fear, it was all worth it for this little person who depended on her. Maria looked at the clock. 4:30. Mr. Ashford usually returned from the office around 6. She had time to finish the cleaning, to put everything back exactly as it had been, except for the pen, which would never be the same. She should probably go to Mrs. Chun right now, confess what had happened, and let her supervisor decide how to handle it. That would be the professional thing to do. But Mrs. Chun would be furious, and she would absolutely tell Mr. Ashford immediately, and Maria found she couldn't bear the thought of waiting in dread for him to come home. No, better to tell him herself. To face him directly and take responsibility. At least that way she could maintain some shred of dignity. Maria placed the pen carefully back on its holder, her fingers lingering on the smooth surface one last time. It really had been beautiful. She hoped Mr. Ashford knew how hard she'd tried to save it, how desperately she'd wanted to make things right. With Lily balanced on her hip, Maria quickly finished the cleaning she'd started hours ago, dusting the bookshelves, wiping down surfaces, straightening papers. She worked with automatic efficiency born from months of practice, her mind already rehearsing the conversation to come. "Mr. Ashford, I need to tell you something. There was an accident. I take full responsibility. I understand if you need to let me go." The words felt hollow, inadequate. How could she possibly explain? How could she make him understand that she hadn't meant for this to happen, that she would give anything to undo it? By the time she finished cleaning, the study looked immaculate, except for the towel and glue on the corner of the desk. Maria cleaned up her repair supplies, erasing all evidence of her desperate attempt to fix the unfixable. Then, with Lily growing heavy in her arms, she sat down to wait. She'd tell him as soon as he got home. She'd be honest, direct, and accept whatever came next. It was all she could do. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steadily toward 5 o'clock. Each measured beat another reminder of Maria's dwindling time. She'd moved to the staff break room after cleaning the study, unable to bear sitting in that space any longer with the damaged pen resting silently on the desk like evidence at a crime scene. Lily was getting restless, her afternoon nap missed in the chaos. She'd pulled out her coloring books again, but her usual enthusiasm had faded. Every few minutes, she would look up at Maria with worried eyes, as if sensing her mother's distress. "Hungry, Mama," Lily said, abandoning her crayons. Maria glanced at the clock. 5:15. She should feed her daughter. Life went on, even when your world was falling apart. She found the sandwich she'd packed that morning and divided it between them, though she could barely swallow past the knot in her throat. The other staff members came and went, the afternoon cook preparing Mr. Ashford's dinner, the gardener stopping by for water, Mrs. Chen making her final rounds. Maria avoided them all, keeping her head down, holding Lily close. Soon enough, everyone would know what she'd done. The thought of their judgment, their pity, made her feel sick. At 5:45, she heard it, the distant sound of the front door opening, the murmur of Mr. Ashford's voice as he exchanged words with someone in the foyer. He was home. Maria's heart began to race. This was it. She should go to him now, before he went to his study, before he discovered the damage himself. She stood up, smoothing her uniform, and reached for Lily's hand. "Come on, sweetheart. We need to talk to Mr. Ashford." But Lily pulled back, shaking her head. "Scared, Mama." "I know, baby. Me too." Maria knelt down to her daughter's level, brushing back her curls. "But sometimes we have to do things even when we're scared. That's what being brave means." Lily's lower lip trembled, but she nodded and took her mother's hand. They made their way through the mansion's halls, their footsteps silent on the Persian rugs. Maria could hear Mr. Ashford's voice coming from the direction of the kitchen. He was probably checking with the cook about dinner. She should wait in the foyer, intercept him there before he went upstairs to change or to his study. But as they rounded the corner, Maria heard another voice, another person with Mr. Ashford. His business partner, Mr. Chen, Mrs. Chen's nephew. They were discussing a merger, something about stock prices and shareholder meetings. Maria's courage wavered. Should she interrupt a business conversation? Should she wait? While she hesitated, frozen in the hallway, Mr. Ashford's voice grew closer. He and Mr. Chen were walking toward the east wing, toward the study. "I just need to grab the contract from my desk," Mr. Ashford was saying. "I've made some notes on the sections that need revision."
No.
He was going to find the pen before Maria could explain. He would see it sitting there, damaged and poorly repaired, and he would know immediately that something had happened. Maria made a split-second decision. She couldn't let him discover it that way, without warning, without context. Pulling Lily along faster than the toddler could comfortably walk, she hurried toward the study. "Mr. Ashford," she called out, her voice echoing in the hallway. Both men turned, surprised. Alexander Ashford was tall and imposing in his tailored suit, his dark hair swept back from a face that usually showed little emotion. At 33, he'd built his late father's company into an empire, earning a reputation for being brilliant, demanding, and utterly uncompromising. In 8 months of working for him, Maria had rarely seen him smile. "Maria?" He frowned slightly, clearly confused by her urgency. "Is something wrong?" Everything was wrong. Everything was falling apart. Maria opened her mouth to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. How did you tell someone you destroyed something irreplaceable? I need to speak with you, she managed. It's important. It's about there was an accident. Mr. Ashford's expression shifted from confusion to concern. Are you hurt? Is Lily hurt? The fact that his first thought was for their well-being made everything worse. Maria shook her head quickly. We're fine. Physically. But something happened in your study. Something broke, and it's my fault, and I'm so sorry. Mr. Chin cleared his throat. Alex, I can come back later. No. Wait in the library, Mr. Ashford said, his eyes never leaving Maria's face. I'll just be a moment. He moved toward the study, and Maria followed, Lily's hand gripped tight in hers. This was it. There was no more delaying, no more rehearsing. He was about to see what she'd done. Mr. Ashford pushed open the study door and stepped inside. His gaze swept the room, taking in every detail with a sharp attention that made him such a successful businessman. Maria watched his face, waiting for the moment he noticed the pen. It took him less than 5 seconds. He crossed to the desk in 3 long strides, his hand reaching for the pen on its holder. Maria saw him pause, saw his fingers hover over it as he noticed something was wrong. Then he picked it up, turning it slowly in the light. The silence stretched unbearably. Maria could hear her own heartbeat, could hear Lily's quick, nervous breaths. She wanted to speak, to explain, but her voice had abandoned her completely. Finally, Mr. Ashford spoke, his voice very quiet. What happened? And just like that, the floodgates opened. I'm so sorry, Maria said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I was cleaning, and I brought Lily with me because I couldn't leave her alone, and I know I wasn't supposed to be in here today, but I'd missed Tuesday, and I had to clean the study, and she wandered in, and I tried to stop her, but she bumped the desk, and the pen fell and broke, and I tried to fix it. I tried so hard to fix it, but I know it's not the same. I know it's ruined, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. Beside her, Lily began to cry too, overwhelmed by the emotion in the room. Mr. Ashford stood very still, the pen cradled in his palm. He was looking at it with an expression Maria couldn't read. Was it anger? Grief? Disappointment? She braced herself for the explosion, for the words that would end her employment and her stability. But they didn't come. Instead, Mr. Ashford carefully set the pen back on its holder and turned to look at Maria and Lily, really look at them, for what felt like the first time. His dark eyes moved from Maria's tear-stained face to Lily's small, trembling form, and something in his expression shifted. You tried to fix it, he said softly. It wasn't a question, but Maria nodded anyway. I used superglue, and I tried to straighten the nib, and I know it's not good enough. I know it's still broken, but I couldn't just leave it. I had to try. Mr. Ashford picked up the pen again, examining it more closely. Maria watched him find the crack in the barrel, the slight irregularity in the cap, the imperfectly straightened nib. She watched him see all her desperate, inadequate attempts to undo the damage. How long did you work on this? He asked. About 2 hours, Maria admitted. I know I should have come to you immediately, but I thought if I could just fix it, if I could make it right. 2 hours, he repeated, and something that might have been wonder entered his voice. You spent 2 hours trying to repair my pen. Maria didn't know what to say to that. Yes, she'd spent 2 hours, and it hadn't been enough. It would never be enough. Mr. Ashford was quiet for a long moment, still studying the pen in his hands. When he finally spoke again, his voice was rough with an emotion Maria couldn't identify. Do you know what this pen means to me, Maria? Yes, she whispered. It was your grandfather's. It's irreplaceable. It was my grandfather's, he confirmed. He carried it every day of his adult life. He built his business with it, signed every major contract with it. When he died, my father inherited it. When my father died, I inherited it. He paused, his thumb running over the crack in the barrel. And I've carried it every day for the past 5 years, trying to live up to their legacy. Maria's tears fell harder. She destroyed not just an object but a symbol, a connection to the people he'd loved and lost. "I'm so sorry," she said again, inadequately. "My grandfather," Mr. Ashford continued, as if she hadn't spoken, "used to tell me that the measure of a person isn't whether they make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The measure of a person is what they do afterward, whether they run or whether they stay and try to make things right." He set the pen down gently and moved closer to Maria and Lily, kneeling down so that he was at eye level with the crying toddler. "Hello, Lily," he said softly. "Can I tell you a secret?" Lily sniffled, looking at this tall, intimidating man through teary eyes. After a moment, she nodded. "When I was just a little older than you, maybe 4 or 5, I broke something of my grandfather's too. A model ship he'd spent months building. I was playing in his study, and I knocked it off the shelf." Mr. Ashford's voice was gentle, almost tender. "I was so scared that I hid the pieces in the trash and pretended I didn't know what happened." Maria's breath caught. She hadn't expected this. "Do you know what my grandfather did when he found out?" Mr. Ashford asked Lily. The little girl shook her head. "He told me that broken things can be forgiven much more easily than broken trust. He said he was sad about the ship, but he was more sad that I'd lied to him." Mr. Ashford glanced up at Maria, and she saw something profound in his eyes. "He said he wished I'd trusted him enough to tell the truth." The implication hung in the air between them. Maria had told the truth. More than that, she'd tried to fix what had been broken, even knowing it was hopeless. Mr. Ashford stood up slowly, picking up the pen one more time. "This pen has a crack in it now," he said, his voice carrying an odd note of something that might have been peace. "And a dented cap, and a nib that probably doesn't write quite as smoothly as it used to." "I'm so sorry," Maria started again, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. This pen has visible damage now, and it will never look the same as it did this morning. But you know what else it has?" He turned the pen in the light, and Maria saw the way the glue caught the reflection. "It has the mark of someone who cared enough to try. Someone who spent 2 hours of her afternoon attempting to undo an accident, knowing it probably wouldn't work. Someone who valued honesty enough to confess rather than hide." Maria felt like she couldn't breathe. You're not angry?" "Oh, I'm angry," Mr. Ashford said, but there was no heat in his voice. "I'm angry at myself for being careless enough to leave something so precious within reach of little hands. I'm angry at the circumstances that put you in a position where you felt you had to bring your daughter to work while handling delicate tasks. But am I angry at you? At Lily?" He shook his head. "No. Accidents happen. What matters is how we respond to them." He walked to his desk and pulled out a drawer, retrieving a small leather journal. Opening it, he clicked the damaged pen and attempted to write. The ink flowed, though the line was slightly uneven, a testament to the bent nib. "It still works," he said, sounding almost surprised. "Not perfectly, but it works." "I can pay for professional repairs," Maria offered desperately. "Or replacement parts, if that's possible. I don't have much, but I can set aside money each month." "Maria." Mr. Ashford's voice was firm but kind. "Stop. I don't want your money. I don't want you to feel guilty for the rest of your employment here. What I want is for you to understand something." He walked over to where she stood, still holding a sniffling Lily. Up close, Maria could see that his eyes weren't cold at all, but rather tired and perhaps a little sad. "My grandfather's pen was precious to me because it reminded me of him," Mr. Ashford said. "But do you know what I think would make him happy? Not that his pen stayed in perfect condition sitting in a safe somewhere. He'd want it used, lived with, carried into the world. And now it has a story. Now, when I look at it, I'll remember the day a brave woman spent 2 hours trying to fix something she'd accidentally broken. I'll remember her dedication, her integrity, her love for her daughter." He smiled just a little. "That's a story my grandfather would have appreciated." Maria couldn't speak. She could only stare at this man who she'd worked for 8 months but never really known, seeing him clearly for the first time. "Go home, Maria," Mr. Ashford said gently. "It's been a long day for both of you. We'll see you tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Maria repeated faintly. "You mean, I still have my job?" "Of course you still have your job. Unless you want to quit." "No," Maria said quickly. "No, I don't want to quit. I thought. You thought I'd fire you over an accident." Mr. Ashford's expression grew somber. "I'm sorry if I've created an environment where that seemed likely. That's something I need to reflect on." He looked down at Lily, who had stopped crying and was watching him with wide, curious eyes. "And you, Miss Lily, are welcome in my study anytime, though perhaps we should put the valuable things higher up on the shelves." Lily smiled tentatively, and Maria felt something break open in her chest, relief and gratitude and disbelief all mixed together. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Mr. Ashford nodded, then seemed to remember something. "Oh, and Maria? Next time you need to clean the study on a non-scheduled day, just let Mrs. Chen know. We can be flexible." As Maria left the study, Lily's hand warm in hers, she glanced back to see Mr. Ashford sitting at his desk, the repaired pen in his hand, writing something in his journal. The afternoon light caught the crack in the barrel, making it gleam, not a flaw to be hidden, but a story to be remembered. That evening, Maria sat in her small apartment with Lily curled up beside her on the worn couch, still trying to process what had happened. The afternoon felt surreal, like something out of a movie rather than real life. People like Alexander Ashford, billionaires, business titans, they didn't react to mistakes with understanding and grace. At least, that's what Maria had always believed. But he had. She'd replayed the conversation in her mind a dozen times during the bus ride home, examining each word, each expression, trying to make sense of it. The way he'd knelt down to Lily's level to tell his story about the model ship. The gentleness in his voice when he'd explained about his grandfather. The way he'd found meaning, even beauty, in the damage to his precious pen. "Mama, happy now?" Lily asked, looking up from her picture book. Maria smiled and kissed the top of her daughter's head. "Yes, baby. Mama's happy now." She was more than happy. She was stunned, grateful, and perhaps most surprisingly, she felt a flicker of hope she hadn't experienced in years. If someone like Mr. Ashford could show that kind of compassion, that kind of understanding, maybe the world wasn't quite as harsh as she'd learned to believe. The next morning, Maria returned to work with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Would Mr. Ashford regret his kindness in the light of day? Would things be awkward between them now? She'd worn her best uniform and styled her hair carefully, wanting to project confidence and professionalism, wanting to prove that his faith in her wasn't misplaced. Mrs. Chen intercepted her in the staff hallway before she could even put away her bag. The older woman's expression was unreadable, and Maria braced herself for a lecture. "Mr. Ashford spoke to me yesterday," Mrs. Chen said, "about the incident in the study." Maria's heart sank. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Chen. I know I shouldn't have." "He told me to adjust the cleaning schedule," Mrs. Chen interrupted. "From now on, you're to clean the study whenever your schedule permits, not on a rigid rotation. He says flexibility is more important than routine." Maria blinked, surprised. "Oh, that's very kind of him." "He also asked me to look into childcare options," Mrs. Chen continued. "He wants to know if we can set up a small playroom in the South Wing, somewhere safe and supervised where staff members can bring their children if needed." The older woman's expression softened slightly. "He said no employee should have to choose between their job and their child's well-being." Maria felt tears prick her eyes again. She seemed to cry more in the past 24 hours than she had in the past year. "He really said that?" "He did. And between you and me?" Mrs. Chen leaned in slightly. "I've worked for the Ashford family for 15 years. I knew Alexander when he was just a boy, and I've watched him turn into the man he is now. Yesterday, When he told me what happened with the pen, I saw something in him I haven't seen since before his father died. Compassion.
Softness.
Humanity. She patted Maria's arm. Whatever you did, whatever happened in that study, it seems to have reminded him of something important. The morning passed in a blur of routine tasks, but Maria found herself thinking about Mrs. Chen's words. Had the incident really affected Mr. Ashford so deeply? And if so, why? She got her answer around noon, when Mr. Ashford emerged from his study and found her cleaning the hallway nearby. "Maria, do you have a moment?" Her heart jumped. "Of course, Mr. Ashford." He gestured for her to follow him into the study, the same room where everything had fallen apart yesterday. But today, it felt different somehow. Less intimidating. "I wanted to show you something," he said, crossing to his desk. He picked up the damaged pen, and Maria noticed it wasn't on the decorative holder anymore. Instead, it sat in a simple pen cup alongside several other writing instruments. "I've decided to use it," Mr. Ashford explained. "Every day, like my grandfather did. Not keep it pristine and protected, but actually use it." He smiled slightly. "It occurred to me that I've been treating this pen and a lot of other things in my life like museum pieces. Valuable, yes, but untouchable. Static. Safe." He sat down on the edge of the desk, a casual posture Maria had never seen from him before. "When you broke this pen, when you spent 2 hours trying to fix it even though you knew you'd probably fail, you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Life isn't about keeping everything perfect and untouched. It's about the marks we make, the repairs we attempt, the honest effort we put in even when success isn't guaranteed."
Maria didn't know what to say.
She settled for the truth. "I was just trying to make things right." "I know. And that's exactly my point." Mr. Ashford turned the pen in his hands. "Do you know how many people work for me across all my companies? Over 3,000. And do you know how many of them would have done what you did? Would have stayed to fix their mistake instead of running? Would have confessed instead of hiding?" He met her eyes. "Not many. Maybe none." "I think you underestimate people," Maria said softly. "Maybe. Or maybe I've surrounded myself with people who tell me what I want to hear instead of the truth."
He set the pen down.
"I've been thinking about that a lot since yesterday. About the kind of environment I've created, both here at home and at my company. About whether I've built something that encourages honesty and integrity, or just obedience and fear." Maria considered this. "May I speak freely, Mr. Ashford?" "Please." I think sometimes very successful people forget that the rest of us are just trying to survive. We're not thinking about integrity in the abstract. We're thinking about whether we can pay rent, whether our children will have health insurance, whether we'll be able to buy groceries next week." She paused, worried she'd overstepped. When you have that kind of power over someone's life, even small actions carry enormous weight. Mr. Ashford was quiet for a long moment, absorbing her words. "You're right," he said finally. "And I haven't been paying attention to that weight, have I? I've been so focused on efficiency, on results, on building the company, that I've forgotten about the human beings who make it all possible." He stood up, pacing to the window. "My grandfather built his company on relationships. He knew every employee by name, asked about their families, showed up to their weddings and their children's graduations. When my father took over, he maintained some of that, though he was more distant. And me?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I hide in my office and communicate through memos and quarterly reports. I've optimized the humanity right out of the business." "It's not too late to change that," Maria offered. "No," Mr. Ashford agreed, turning back to face her. "No, it's not. And I'd like to start here, with the household staff. I want to know what would make your lives better. Not just more efficient, but genuinely better. Easier. Happier." Maria thought about this. The playroom idea Mrs. Chen mentioned would help a lot. And maybe just knowing that mistakes won't automatically mean losing our jobs? That would take away a lot of the fear. Consider it done. What else? I'm not sure I should be the one. Maria. Mr. Ashford's voice was gentle but firm. I'm asking you because you had the courage to tell me a hard truth yesterday. You didn't make excuses or shift blame. You took responsibility and tried to make things right. That's the kind of person whose opinion I value. So please, tell me what else would help. Maria took a deep breath, deciding to trust this new version of her employer. Better health insurance, she said. Especially coverage for dependents. A lot of the staff have children, and medical bills are terrifying when you're living paycheck to paycheck. And maybe a small emergency fund program, where if something unexpected happens, a car breaks down, a family member gets sick, there's some kind of support available without it being a loan that has to be repaid. Mr. Ashford was nodding, and Maria noticed he'd taken out his phone and was making notes. What else? Respect, she said quietly. Just being treated like people instead of servants. Being greeted by name, having our work acknowledged, feeling like we matter as individuals. You're right, Mr. Ashford said. And I'm ashamed to say I've failed at that completely. I barely know the names of the people who work in this house, let alone anything about their lives. He looked at Maria with something that might have been regret. What's your last name, Maria? Santos. And Lily's father? Not in the picture. It's just the two of us. Mr. Ashford nodded slowly. Well, Miss Santos, I want you to know that I see you now. Not just as my housekeeper, but as a person, a mother doing her best to build a good life for her daughter. And I want to make sure that working here helps you build that life, not just survive it. Before Maria could respond, there was a soft knock at the study door. Mrs. Chun poked her head in, looking apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, but Mr. Ashford, you have a conference call in 10 minutes. Cancel it, he said. Both women stared at him. Excuse me?
Mrs. Chun said.
Cancel the call. Or better yet, have Robert handle it. Robert was his VP of operations, Maria had learned. I have more important things to do this afternoon. Mrs. Chun looked like she wanted to argue but thought better of it. She nodded and disappeared. Mr. Ashford turned back to Maria with a determined expression. I'm going to meet with the household staff. All of them. Individually. I want to know their names, their situations, their needs. And then I'm going to implement real changes, not just symbolic gestures. That's wonderful, Mr. Ashford, Maria said sincerely. And please call me Alex. At least when it's just us. Maria hesitated. That might be hard to get used to.
Try.
I insist. He smiled, and Maria realized it was the first genuine smile she'd ever seen from him. It transformed his entire face, making him look years younger. You've already been braver than most people would be in your position. Calling me by my first name should be easy in comparison. Over the following weeks, Maria watched in amazement as Alexander Ashford, Alex, though she still stumbled over the name, transformed from a distant employer into something approaching a friend. He started eating breakfast in the kitchen instead of his study, chatting with the staff about their days. He remembered birthdays and asked follow-up questions about sick relatives and children's school performances. The playroom became a reality, a bright, cheerful space filled with toys and books where Lily and the children of other staff members could play safely while their parents worked. Alex had consulted with child development experts and spared no expense, creating something that looked more like a high-end daycare than a simple playroom. He also implemented every suggestion Maria had made and dozens more that came from other staff members. Health insurance was upgraded. An emergency fund was established. Wages were reviewed and, in many cases, increased. The entire culture of the household shifted from formal and hierarchical to warm and collaborative. But perhaps the most significant change was in Alex himself. He smiles now, Mrs. Chun observed one afternoon, watching through the window as Alex played with Lily in the garden. The little girl was showing him her latest collection of smooth pebbles, and he was examining each one with apparent fascination. I haven't seen him smile like that since he was a boy himself. Maria had noticed it too. The hard edges that had defined Alex's personality seemed to have softened. He laughed more, stressed less, and seemed genuinely happy in a way he hadn't been before. He needed to remember how to be human, Maria said softly. He'd forgotten somewhere along the way. And you reminded him. No, Maria corrected. Lily reminded him. I just gave him the opportunity to remember. That evening, as Maria was preparing to leave for the day, Alex called her into the study once more. The damaged pen sat on his desk, clearly well used now, its imperfections worn in like badges of honor. I've been thinking, Alex said, about our conversation a few weeks ago, about making your life better, not just easier. You've already done so much, Maria protested. The playroom, the insurance, the wage increase. Those are things I should have done anyway. Basic decency from an employer. But I want to do more. He pulled out an envelope and handed it to her. This is a scholarship fund I'm establishing for employees' children. Full ride to any accredited college or university, including room and board and living expenses. Maria opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter explaining the program and paperwork for Lily's enrollment. She's 2 years old, Maria said, her voice cracking. I know. But in 16 years, when she's ready for college, this will be waiting for her. And in the meantime, it's one less thing you have to worry about, one less source of stress, one less reason to sacrifice your own well-being for her future. Maria couldn't speak. She could only stare at the papers in her hands, at this gift that would change her daughter's entire life. You fixed more than my pen that day, Alex said quietly. You fixed something in me that I didn't even realize was broken. This is just my way of saying thank you. Through her tears, Maria managed to whisper, Thank you. Thank you so much. No, Alex said, picking up the pen with its visible crack, its bent nib, its imperfect beauty. Thank you for having the courage to tell the truth, for trying to fix what was broken, for reminding me what really matters. Outside the study window, Lily played in the garden, collecting more treasures, completely unaware that her future had just been transformed. Maria watched her daughter through grateful tears, holding the scholarship papers to her chest, and thought about broken pens and second chances and the unexpected kindness that could bloom from honest mistakes. 3 months after the incident with the pen, Maria arrived at work to find the mansion buzzing with unusual energy. Catering trucks lined the circular driveway, florists carried enormous arrangements through the front door, and Mrs. Chun was orchestrating the chaos with the precision of a military general. What's happening? Maria asked, intercepting the older woman in the hallway. Mr. Ashford is hosting a dinner party tonight, Mrs. Chun explained, checking something off on her clipboard. 30 guests. Board members, investors, business partners. The most important people in his professional world. Maria felt a flutter of anxiety. In the months since she'd broken the pen, her relationship with Alex had evolved into something comfortable and genuine, but she'd never seen him in full billionaire mode, hosting the kind of elite gathering that defined his social circle. Does he need anything from me? Maria asked. Actually, yes. He specifically requested that you work the dinner service tonight. Extra pay, of course. Maria's anxiety intensified. Me? But I'm a housekeeper, not a server. Surely there are people more qualified. He asked for you, Mrs. Chun said firmly. And, between you and me, I think he wants to show these people something. Or perhaps prove something to himself. Either way, you're serving dinner tonight. The agency servers will handle most of it. You'll just be assisting. That evening, Maria changed into the formal black dress and white apron that Mrs. Chun provided. She'd left Lily in the new playroom with Sophia, another staff member's teenage daughter who'd been hired to supervise the space during events. As she checked her reflection in the staff bathroom mirror, Maria barely recognized herself. She looked professional, competent, like she belonged in a world of wealth and power. If only she felt that way inside. The guests began arriving at 7, and Maria got her first glimpse of Alex's other life. The men wore expensive suits that probably cost more than her monthly salary. The women dripped with jewelry and designer dresses. They moved through the mansion like they owned it, their laughter loud, their conversations peppered with references to stock prices and mergers and exclusive vacation destinations. Alex stood in the center of it all, playing the perfect host. He looked different tonight, harder, more polished, more like the intimidating billionaire Maria had first met 8 months ago. But when his eyes found hers across the room, something in his expression softened briefly, a reminder that this was still the same man who played with Lily in the garden. The dinner itself was an elaborate affair. Maria helped serve the first course, her hands steady despite her nerves. She'd worked in restaurants before Lily was born. She knew how to carry a tray, how to serve from the left and clear from the right, how to be present but invisible. But invisibility proved challenging when you were the only server Mr. Alexander Ashford kept making eye contact with. "You've certainly improved the staff quality, Alex," one of the men commented as Maria refilled his wine glass. "Where did you find this one?" The condescending tone made Maria's skin prickle, but she kept her expression neutral. "Maria has worked for me for almost a year," Alex said coolly. "She's an excellent housekeeper and a remarkable person." The man chuckled. "A remarkable housekeeper. That's a new one." "No," Alex said, and there was steel in his voice now. "A remarkable person who also happens to be a housekeeper. The job doesn't define the person, Richard." An uncomfortable silence fell over that section of the table. Maria caught Mrs. Chen's eye from across the room. The older woman gave her a subtle nod of approval. As the evening progressed, Maria began to notice patterns in the conversation. The guests talked about wealth like it was a game, about other people like they were chess pieces. They threw around figures, millions, billions, with casual indifference while making jokes about their second homes and third wives. During the main course, a woman named Catherine turned to Alex with a predatory smile. "So tell us, darling, what's your secret? You've doubled your father's empire in just 5 years. How do you do it?" Alex set down his fork, and Maria saw something shift in his expression. "Honestly, Catherine, I'm not sure it's something worth celebrating." The table went quiet. "What do you mean?" Catherine pressed. "You're one of the most successful businessmen in the country." "Successful by what measure?" Alex asked. "Profit margins? Stock prices? Those are just numbers on a spreadsheet. They don't tell you anything about the actual value being created or the actual human cost of that creation." One of the older board members, a man named Harrison, frowned. "Alex, is everything all right? You're starting to sound like one of those progressive politicians." "Maybe they have a point," Alex said calmly. "When did we decide that the only thing that matters is shareholder value? What about employee well-being, community impact, environmental sustainability, human dignity?" Maria paused in the act of clearing a plate, surprised by the direction of the conversation. "Human dignity doesn't pay dividends," Richard said with a laugh. "No," Alex agreed. "But maybe that's a problem with our system, not with the concept of human dignity." The atmosphere at the table had shifted from celebratory to tense. Maria could see the guests exchanging glances, uncertain how to respond to this version of Alexander Ashford. "What brought this on?" Harrison asked carefully. "Has something happened?" Alex was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming on the table. Then his eyes found Maria's, and he made a decision that would change the entire evening. "Actually, yes," he said. "Something did happen. A few months ago, one of my employees made a mistake. A fairly small one in the grand scheme of things, but one that damaged something I cared deeply about." Maria's heart began to race. Surely, he wasn't going to tell them about the pen. "And in dealing with that mistake," Alex continued, "I learned something important. I learned that I'd built my entire life, personal and professional, around avoiding vulnerability, around maintaining control, around keeping everything perfect and untouchable. He picked up the repaired pen from beside his plate. Maria hadn't even noticed he'd brought it to dinner. "This pen belonged to my grandfather," Alex said, holding it up so everyone could see. The crack in the barrel was clearly visible in the candlelight. It was perfect, pristine, a museum piece. And then someone broke it. Catherine gasped. "Oh, Alex, I'm so sorry." "That's terrible." "Is it?" Alex asked. "Because here's what happened after it broke. The person who broke it, Maria, actually," he gestured to her, and Maria felt every eye in the room turn her way, spent 2 hours trying to repair it. She knew she'd probably fail. She knew it would never be the same. But she tried anyway because that's the kind of person she is. Maria wanted to disappear into the floor, but she kept her composure, meeting the curious and judgmental stares with as much dignity as she could muster. And when she confessed what had happened, Alex went on. "When she stood in my study with tears streaming down her face, terrified that she'd lose her job, I had a choice. I could react the way everyone expected, with anger, with consequences, with cold efficiency. Or I could react with grace." He turned the pen in his hands, letting the light catch the imperfections. "I chose grace. And in making that choice, I discovered something. This pen is more valuable to me now than it was when it was perfect, because now it has a story. Now it represents something beyond my family's legacy. It represents the kind of man I want to be. Someone who values honesty over perfection. Someone who measures people by their character, not their mistakes. Someone who understands that broken things can still be beautiful." The silence at the table was absolute. Maria could hardly breathe. "So, to answer your question, Catherine," Alex said, "my secret to success? I don't have one. At least, not one worth emulating. I've spent 5 years building an empire while forgetting to build a life. I've maximized profits while minimizing humanity. I've surrounded myself with people who see other human beings as resources to be optimized rather than individuals worthy of respect and dignity." "Alex," Harrison said slowly, "I'm not sure what you're trying to say here." "I'm saying that I'm done," Alex replied. "I'm done pretending that money is the only thing that matters. I'm done treating people like they're disposable. I'm done measuring my worth by the size of my bank account instead of the quality of my character." He set the pen down gently and looked around the table at his shocked guests. "Starting Monday, I'm implementing major changes at the company. Substantial wage increases for all hourly employees. Comprehensive benefits packages. Profit-sharing programs. Paid family leave. Mental health support. The works. It's going to cost millions, maybe tens of millions, and it's going to hurt our profit margins in the short term." "You can't be serious," Richard sputtered. "The board will never approve this." "I control 51% of the voting shares," Alex said calmly. "The board doesn't get a vote. But if any of you want to sell your shares in protest, I'll buy them at current market value." The dinner dissolved into chaos after that. Some guests were outraged, others were confused. A few seemed cautiously intrigued. Maria retreated to the kitchen with her tray of dirty dishes, her hands shaking. Mrs. Chun found her there 20 minutes later. "That was quite a speech," the older woman said. "He shouldn't have mentioned me," Maria said. "Now everyone knows I'm the one who broke his precious pen." "He mentioned you because you're the reason he's changing," Mrs. Chun corrected. "You showed him what real integrity looks like, Maria. You gave him permission to be human again." Through the kitchen door, Maria could hear the party breaking up early, guests making awkward excuses and quick exits. She felt terrible. She'd ruined Alex's important dinner, exposed him to judgment from his peers, probably damaged his professional relationships. But when the last guest had finally left and the house fell quiet, Alex appeared in the kitchen doorway. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, looking exhausted but somehow lighter than he had in months. "I'm sorry," Maria said immediately. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." You shouldn't have told them about the pen. Why not? Alex asked. It's the truth. And I'm tired of hiding the truth to make people comfortable. But your business partners, your board members, will either adapt to the new direction or move on. Either way, I can't keep living a lie. He came further into the kitchen, accepting the cup of coffee Mrs. Chun handed him. Do you know what Richard said to me on his way out? He said I was throwing away my grandfather's legacy. But my grandfather didn't build his legacy on ruthless efficiency and maximum profits. He built it on relationships and integrity and treating people with dignity. Alex took a sip of his coffee, then continued. I've spent 5 years trying to prove I was worthy of inheriting his company, and in the process, I forgot to inherit his values. You helped me remember. That story I told Lily about breaking his model ship? It wasn't until after I told it that I realized the parallel. My grandfather forgave my mistake because I was a child learning about consequences. But he'd be ashamed of the man I became, someone who forgot how to forgive, how to see the humanity in people, how to value character over perfection. You're being too hard on yourself, Maria said softly. Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally being honest with myself for the first time in years. He smiled at her.
Thank you, Maria.
For breaking my pen, for trying to fix it, for being brave enough to tell the truth. You've given me something far more valuable than a pristine heirloom. You've given me a chance to become the kind of person my grandfather would be proud of. Later that night, after Maria had collected Lily from the playroom and was preparing to leave, Alex stopped her at the door. I almost forgot, he said, handing her an envelope. Your bonus for working the dinner tonight. Maria opened it and gasped. The check inside was for $5,000. This is too much, she protested. I just served some dishes and refilled some wine glasses. You did much more than that, Alex said. You stood there with grace and dignity while I told a room full of judgmental people about your mistake. You didn't flinch, didn't apologize, didn't make excuses. You just existed in your truth, and that was powerful. That check is for the hours you worked tonight, yes, but also for the lesson you taught me months ago and keep teaching me every day. What lesson is that? That the measure of a person isn't their perfection or their wealth or their success. It's their willingness to face their mistakes, to try to make things right, to choose honesty even when it's terrifying. He smiled. You embodied that lesson, Maria, and I'm grateful to know you. As Maria rode the bus home that night, Lily asleep against her shoulder and the $5,000 check in her pocket, she thought about broken pens and second chances and the strange, beautiful ways that life could change in an instant. She'd come to work that morning expecting another ordinary day. Instead, she'd witnessed the transformation of a man who'd forgotten how to be human. And somehow, impossibly, she'd been part of that transformation. The pen was still broken. It would always be broken. But Alex was right. Broken things could still be beautiful. Sometimes, they were the most beautiful things of all. 6 months after the disastrous dinner party, which, according to business journals, had actually been the catalyst for some of the most progressive labor reforms in the industry, Maria stood in her new apartment and marveled at how much had changed. The apartment wasn't extravagant. She'd refused Alex's offer to pay for something in a more upscale neighborhood, but it was hers. 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, a safe neighborhood, with good schools. Lily had her own room for the first time in her life, painted a cheerful yellow with clouds on the ceiling that glowed in the dark. Maria could have afforded the apartment on her increased salary alone, but the bonuses Alex had insisted on giving her had allowed her to furnish it properly and build a real savings account. For the first time since Lily was born, Maria didn't lie awake at night terrified of unexpected expenses. She had a cushion. She had security. She also had something even more valuable, genuine friendship. Alex had become a fixture in their lives, showing up for Sunday dinners at Maria's invitation, bringing thoughtful gifts for Lily, books and educational toys, never anything too extravagant, and treating Maria like an equal rather than an employee. The boundaries between their professional and personal relationships had blurred in the best possible way. "Mama, he's here," Lily shouted from her spot by the window, where she'd been watching for Alex's car. Maria smiled and went to open the door. Alex stood in the hallway holding a bouquet of sunflowers, her favorite, which he'd somehow remembered from a casual conversation months ago, and a wrapped present that was clearly a book judging by its shape. "You didn't have to bring anything," Maria said, accepting the flowers. "It's your housewarming," Alex protested. "Of course I brought gifts." Lily launched herself at Alex's legs, and he scooped her up easily, their ritual greeting. At nearly 3 years old now, Lily had become Alex's most devoted fan, and the feeling was clearly mutual. "I painted my room," Lily announced. "It has clouds. I heard. I can't wait to see them." While Lily dragged Alex off for the grand tour, Maria arranged the sunflowers in a vase and thought about the strange path that had led them here. If someone had told her 8 months ago that she'd become close friends with billionaire Alexander Ashford, she would have laughed in disbelief. But life had a way of surprising you, usually when you least expected it. Over dinner, homemade enchiladas that Alex praised enthusiastically, the conversation turned to the changes at Alex's company. "The preliminary numbers are in from the new programs," Alex said, helping himself to seconds. "Employee retention is up 40%. Productivity has increased across all departments. Sick days are down. And perhaps most importantly, worker satisfaction scores have tripled." "That's wonderful," Maria said sincerely. "It turns out that when you treat people like human beings instead of resources, they actually perform better," Alex said with a wry smile. "Who knew?" "Everyone who's ever been an employee knew," Maria teased. "Fair point." Alex took a sip of his water. "I've been approached by several business publications wanting to do profiles on the changes. They're calling it the Ashford model of conscious capitalism." "Are you going to do the interviews?" "I am. But I'm going to insist that they talk to employees too, not just management. I want them to hear directly from the people whose lives have been impacted." He paused. "Actually, I was hoping you might be willing to be interviewed. To tell your story." Maria set down her fork. "My story? About what it's like to work in an environment that values you as a person. About the difference the changes have made. About..." He hesitated. "About the pen." "Alex, I don't know if that's a good idea." "Why not?" "Because it makes me sound like some kind of inspirational figure, and I'm not. I'm just a person who made a mistake and tried to fix it." "Exactly," Alex said. "That's exactly why your story matters. Because it's not about being perfect or extraordinary. It's about being honest and trying your best, even when you're scared. That's something everyone can relate to." Maria considered this. The thought of being in a business magazine, of having her name and face associated with Alex's success story, felt overwhelming. But she also understood why it mattered. How many other people were working in fear, convinced that any mistake would cost them everything. How many were being treated as disposable rather than valuable. "I'll think about it," she promised. After dinner, they moved to the small living room. Lily curled up between them on the couch, clutching her new book, a beautiful illustrated version of The Velveteen Rabbit, which Alex had chosen with typical thoughtfulness, and Maria felt a contentment she'd never experienced before. This small, simple moment, 3 people who'd become a kind of found family, comfortable in each other's presence, was worth more than all the money in the world. "Read it, Alex," Lily demanded, and Alex obliged, his deep voice bringing the story to life. Maria found herself listening not to the words, but to the emotion behind them. When Alex reached the passage about the skin horse explaining what it means to become real, real isn't how you are made. It's a thing that happens to you. His voice grew soft with feeling. "Does it hurt?" asked the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. "When you are real, you don't mind being hurt." Alex paused, and Maria saw him touch the pocket where he kept his grandfather's pen. He carried it everywhere now, using it daily, the crack and the bent nib reminders of an important lesson learned. What happens when you're real? Lily asked, interrupting the story. Alex looked at Maria, and something passed between them, an understanding, a shared truth. You become more yourself, he said simply. Your imperfections don't make you less. They make you more. Later, after Lily had fallen asleep and Maria had carried her to her cloud-ceiling bedroom, Alex helped clean up the dinner dishes. They worked in comfortable silence, a routine they developed over months of Sunday dinners. I've been thinking, Alex said as he dried a plate, about the scholarship fund I set up for Lily. Maria's hands stilled in the soapy water. Is there a problem with it? No, not at all. I was just thinking it's not enough. I want to expand it, make it available to all employees' children, not just yours. Full college funding for any child of any person who works for me, in any of my companies. Maria turned to look at him, stunned. Alex, do you know how much that would cost? Millions, probably. Maybe tens of millions, depending on how many people take advantage of it. He set down the dish and turned to face her fully. But here's the thing, Maria. I have billions. Literal billions. More money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And what am I doing with it? Watching the numbers in my bank account get bigger while the people who actually create that wealth struggle to afford basic necessities for their children. He leaned against the counter, his expression earnest. You told me once that very successful people forget that everyone else is just trying to survive. You were right. I'd forgotten that my wealth exists because of other people's labor. The least I can do is ensure that their children have the opportunities my privilege has always afforded me. This is going to change a lot of lives, Maria said softly. I hope so, because mine has already been changed.
By you.
By Lily. By learning to value what actually matters. Which is connection, honesty, integrity, love. He smiled. The things that can't be measured in quarterly reports or stock prices. The things my grandfather understood, but I'd forgotten. Maria impulsively hugged him, this man who'd been transformed by a broken pen and a housekeeper's honesty. Your grandfather would be so proud of you. I hope so, Alex said, returning the embrace. I really hope so. The following Monday, the scholarship program was announced company-wide. The response was overwhelming, tears, gratitude, disbelief that such a thing could be real. Maria watched the messages pour in through the company's internal network. Alex had insisted she have access to it, saying her perspective was valuable for policy decisions, and she felt her own tears fall. This was the ripple effect of choosing honesty over fear, of trying to fix what was broken instead of running away. One small moment of integrity had cascaded into life-changing opportunities for hundreds of families. But the changes didn't stop there. Inspired by Alex's example, other business leaders began implementing similar programs. The Ashford model became a movement, a challenge to the assumption that maximizing profit meant minimizing humanity. Business schools started teaching case studies about the correlation between worker well-being and company success. Slowly, incrementally, the culture began to shift. And at the center of it all was a broken pen. Alex gave his first major interview 6 weeks later, and he insisted that Maria participate. They sat side by side in his study, the same room where everything had changed, and told their story to a journalist from a major business publication. So let me make sure I understand, the journalist said, looking between them. The entire transformation of your business philosophy, the programs that are now being adopted across the industry, all of this started because Ms. Santos broke your grandfather's pen? That's oversimplifying it, Alex said. But yes, in essence. The pen was the catalyst, but Maria was the teacher. She showed me what real integrity looks like. The courage to face your mistakes, the determination to make things right even when success seems impossible, the dignity of honest work and honest effort. The journalist turned to Maria. And how do you feel about being the inspiration for all these changes? Maria chose her words carefully. I don't think of myself as an inspiration. I think of myself as someone who made a mistake and tried to fix it, which is something everyone does. But if my story helps other people feel less afraid to be honest, less terrified of being imperfect, then I'm glad to share it. What would you say to other workers who are in situations where they're afraid to make mistakes or speak up? Maria thought about all the nights she'd lain awake worrying about rent, about Lily's medical bills, about what would happen if she lost her job. She thought about the fear that had been her constant companion before that day in the study. I would say that you deserve to work in an environment where your humanity is valued, she said finally. Where a mistake doesn't mean the end of your livelihood. Where honesty is rewarded instead of punished. And if you're not in that environment, I hope the people in power read this article and start making changes. Because the Ashford model isn't revolutionary, it's just basic human decency. It shouldn't be rare. It should be the minimum standard. The article ran the following month, with a photo of Alex and Maria sitting in the study, the repaired pen prominently displayed on the desk between them. The headline read, "The Broken Pen That Built a Better Business Model." It went viral. Suddenly, Maria was being invited to speak at conferences, to share her story at corporate events, to consult with companies on employee relations. It was overwhelming and strange, but Alex helped her navigate it, always reminding her that she didn't have to do anything she wasn't comfortable with. "You're not my employee anymore," he said when she expressed concern about taking time off for speaking engagements. "You're my friend, and you're becoming an advocate for workers' rights in your own right. The housekeeping job is just your day job now, if you even want to keep it." "I do," Maria said firmly. "I like the work, I like the stability, and I'm not ready to give it up for something as uncertain as public speaking." "Then keep it. But also keep telling your story, because it matters." A year after the pen broke, Alex hosted another dinner party. But this one was different. Instead of board members and investors, the guests were household staff members, their families, and selected employees from Alex's companies, people whose lives had been changed by the new policies. Maria watched from the head of the table, because Alex had insisted she sit beside him as the guest of honor, as Lily played with the other children in the corner of the dining room. The long table was crowded with people from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all stories. And they were all there because one person had chosen grace over anger, understanding over punishment, humanity over profit. "I want to make a toast," Alex said, standing and raising his glass. The room fell quiet. "A year ago, I was a different person. Successful, yes, but empty. I'd built an empire, but forgotten to build a life. I'd optimized my business, but lost sight of the humans who made it possible." He looked at Maria, and she saw genuine affection in his eyes. "And then someone broke my grandfather's pen." Gentle laughter rippled through the room. Everyone knew the story by now. "That broken pen taught me the most important lesson of my life, that our value as human beings isn't measured by our perfection or our wealth or our success. It's measured by our character, our integrity, our willingness to do the right thing even when it's difficult." He picked up the pen, holding it so everyone could see the crack, the imperfections, the evidence of repair. "This pen is more precious to me now than it was when it was perfect. Because now it tells a story about second chances and honest mistakes and the beauty of trying to make things right. It reminds me every day of the kind of person I want to be, the kind of employer I want to be, the kind of friend I want to be." He turned to Maria. "To the woman who had the courage to tell me the truth, to try to fix what was broken, and to show me what really matters, thank you. You didn't just change my life. You changed thousands of lives. And I will be grateful for that every single day." "To Maria," someone called out, and the toast was echoed around the table. Maria felt tears streaming down her face. Happy tears this time, joyful tears. She raised her own glass. "To second chances. To honest mistakes. To all of us learning to be better together." They drank, and then the dinner began. A celebration not of wealth or power, but of human connection, of dignity, of the revolutionary idea that people mattered more than profits. Later, as the party was winding down, Maria found Alex standing in his study, holding the pen and looking out the window at the gardens where he so often played with Lily now. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. He turned and smiled. "I was just thinking about my grandfather, about what he would make of all this. I think he'd be proud." "I hope so. I'm trying to honor his legacy in a way that matters, not by growing the company bigger, but by making it better, more human, more conscious of the lives it touches." "You're doing that," Maria assured him. "Every day, you're doing that." Alex was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you ever regret it?"
That day?
Breaking the pen. Maria considered the question seriously. That day had been terrifying, humiliating, devastating. But it had also been the catalyst for everything good that had come after. The changes in the company, the scholarship fund, her friendship with Alex, the security and opportunity it had brought to Lily's life. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret it. Because broken things can still be beautiful. Sometimes they're the most beautiful things of all." Alex smiled and placed the pen carefully on his desk, in the simple pen cup where it lived now alongside other everyday writing instruments. "My grandfather used to say that the true measure of a person is revealed in how they handle their failures, not their successes." Wise man.
He was.
And he would have liked you, Maria. He would have recognized your integrity, your strength, your devotion to your daughter. Alex paused. "Actually, I think he would have loved the fact that it was you who broke his pen. Because you're exactly the kind of person he built his company for, honest workers who deserved respect and fair treatment." From the dining room, they could hear Lily's laughter mixing with the other children's voices, the sound of a new generation growing up in a slightly better world than their parents had known. "Come on," Maria said, linking her arm through Alex's. "Let's get back to the party. I think Lily's trying to teach the other kids how to play her version of hide and seek, and it requires adult supervision." As they walked back to the celebration together, Maria glanced back at the study one last time. The pen sat quietly on the desk, its crack catching the light, a reminder that our mistakes don't define us. Our response to them does. And sometimes, if we're very lucky and very brave, our broken pieces can help heal the world.